Please take your seat. The program is about to begin. Once again, please take your seat. The program is about to begin.
We are joyful warriors. We are going to fight like hell for the future of this country with a smile on our face because our children are watching. Our members build relationships, spread truth to educate their communities, and empower parents to do the same. That is the power of parents.
Moms for Liberty were founded by two moms who turned their mission of transparency in schools into a movement that was so powerful they were called domestic terrorists. This year's MVP's most valuable patriots, the founders of Moms for Liberty, Tina Deskovich and Tiffany Justice.
But we want to be clear, we are accepting this on behalf of over 130,000 moms and dads across America.
So I came here to say enough. We have a crisis in America in public education. It takes everybody in this state and in this country to care about this issue. Media, step up. Cover the fact that we are in a literacy crisis. This is the future of our kids and our country.
Moms for Liberty had a town hall here in New York City. Council members, city council members here, and some assemblymen and women were trying to shut this thing down.
Under the guise of literary value, these adults are advocating for the sexualized grooming of children.
And that our parental rights have been revoked through the effort of leftist politicians.
In support of the parental rights bill, these rights are not given to us by the government. They are endowed to us by our Creator.
What is your right to tell a parent who wants their child, who might feel seen by this story?
If a child feels seen by this story, that means that they have been the victim of a predator.
The radical left is even slandering Moms for Liberty as a so-called hate group. You're a hate group. You are a hate. You hate your children. You hate everybody. You're a hate group. I'm telling you, these people are sick. But Moms for Liberty is no hate group. You are joyful warriors. You are fierce, fierce patriots. You're not the threat to America. You're the best thing that's ever happened to America.
We have the fundamental right given to us by God to raise our children, to direct their upbringing, their education, their moral and religious upbringing. And once we let the government get in between us and our children, our families are done. Our country is at risk.
Please welcome to the stage co-founder of Moms for Liberty, Tiffany Justice.
Thank you so much for joining us today at Giving Americans a Voice Town Hall. Moms for Liberty is a parental rights organization. Our mission statement is to unify, educate, and empower parents to defend their parental rights at every level of government. Every parent has the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children. The issues that we care about at Moms for Liberty are not partisan issues. Making sure that kids learn to read, protecting children, parental rights. It's a shame that they have become so partisan, but we're here today to highlight some amazing state leaders that are showing the way forward, state leaders that can be role models for every elected official in America. Today we'll talk about the issues that Americans care about. We'll talk about some of the questions and concerns that our moms and dads have as they're raising children. I watched as President Trump survived an assassination attempt. And when he stood up, he pumped his fist in the air and he said, "Fight, fight, fight." We fight at Moms for Liberty. And there were people, thank you.
We are fighting for our country and the future of our children. And there were some people that told us, oh, don't use that word fight, Tiffany. You don't want to be too volatile. Well, they're coming after our kids. And we always talk about at Moms for Liberty that we're fighting with a smile on our face. We call ourselves joyful warriors. That's right. Radical Marxists are trying to steal our children's future. We will not let them do that. So we are going to fight like hell with a smile on our faces because our children are watching us, and it is a privilege to fight for this country. I thank you all again for joining us today. I hope you enjoy. Right now, we'll be joined by Ed Martin, who is the president of the Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, who will give us our blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Before I begin and before I ask you to join me in prayer, you notice on the lanyard it said we've only just started, or I'm misquoting it, the Moms for Liberty have only started fighting. About 3 months ago, Donald Trump asked me and a few others to be part of the development of the platform of the Republican Party. And within about 36 hours, I heard from Tiffany, and so did two of the other people on the committee that was working on this. And if you go into your copy, I hope you have one, especially if you're a delegate, you'll see in Chapter 7 the fingerprints of the Moms for Liberty and their fight for control for parents and for moms. It's an extraordinary influence that they have and you all have that participate. So it's a privilege to be here, and I just encourage you as we go forward in these important times. So if I would ask you to please join me as we begin and pray. Lord, we thank you for this time together in this beautiful hall constructed by thousands and thousands of people across the ages. Lord, we bless you for their creation, and we stand in awe, Lord, of your creation. And as mothers and fathers, we stand in awe of our children. What a gift you give us. What a gift you give each of us. And Lord, we know a special calling of moms, of mothers. We see it in Scripture, but we feel it in our hearts. And Lord, we raise up our moms right now, Lord. We thank you for the gift of motherhood, and we thank you for in this time of so many changes in the world that there are moms coming together and saying, we know what it means to be a mother. We know how to fight for our children. And as we gather, Lord, we ask a blessing on Mrs. Trump, on President Trump, on that family in this time of unprecedented challenge and hate and fear. Lord, we ask you to bring what you've offered to us, the peace. Bring peace to them and to all of us. In this conversation, Lord, we will hear from these great actors who have sought your wisdom, and in their states and their communities, they've made a difference. Lord, we ask you to continue to inspire them. And especially, Lord, continue to inspire all the leaders to listen to the voices of the moms. Bless Tina and Tiffany and all those who work with Moms for Liberty on the front lines and have their share of slings and arrows thrown at them. Bless them, strengthen them, put a hedge of protection around them. We ask you in this great time, Lord, to hear our praise, our words of praise, and hear our prayer that you bless America again. Bless America for our children and for our moms and dads and for all of us. And I offer this in the name of my Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Our next, singer, will be Monica Kepis, who is a Moms for Liberty leader here in Wisconsin. She's going to lead us in our national anthem, but like a typical mom, Moms for Liberty, before I came out, she said, tell them they have to sing too. It's not a solo, it's a sing-along. So you're going to have to sing or I'm going to be in trouble, and this is not acceptable. So please welcome Monica Kepis. Monica?
Let's stand. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Please welcome to the stage co-founder of Moms for Liberty, Tina Deskovich.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I just want to take a couple minutes to say a few things. And one thing is, there's something going on in our country right now. And you can't see it with your eyes. But we all know what it is. It's the battle between good and evil. It's a battle for the soul of our country. It's a battle for the souls of men and women in our country. And bigger and more focused, it's battle for the soul of our children. Moms for Liberty's mission statement is not a catchphrase. It's not a one-off issue that's going to end in November. Our mission is to save America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. Our focus is to protect children and to protect our rights to raise our children as God intended us to raise them. The enemy wants to come in between us and our children. And once that happens, as you saw in the opening video, our families are done, our communities are done, and our country is lost. So Moms for Liberty is here to fight, 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 and win, 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 and winning we are. "380 of our members are sitting in school board seats across the country right now. 42 bills have been signed into laws in 12 different states that protect children, open curriculum to makes curriculum more transparent in schools, protect parental rights, saves girls' sports, you name it. We are out there fighting on the front lines. All of our 130,000 members across 48 states and 300 chapters are doing this work every day, and because of that, we are winning. I just want to get off the stage so we can get the more important people up. If you could put my call to action for you guys today. If you're currently not a member of Moms for Liberty, there it is. Pull out your phones right now. Text Liberty to 53445. Make sure you're a member. Some other ways we are winning is lawsuits. And if you're a member of Moms for Liberty, you have the potential, and your children have the potential to be protected from some of the laws and things that are happening in this country right now. So join Moms for Liberty. There's many benefits. You will make many friends. Also, on the other side of the screen, it's not cheap to do this work. We do it on a shoestring budget. We started with $500, a box of t-shirts in my back bedroom with a 10-year-old computer, and we have grown massively in 3.5 years, but we cannot do that without your help. Even $10 helps. Text donate to 53445. It'll take you right to our donate page. And so now I'm going to turn the time over to the rest of the program. Thank you so much.
So today you're getting a bit of a taste of what it's like to go to a Moms for Liberty chapter meeting, because our moms don't just talk about doing things, they actually do things. And during the time of COVID, it felt like we were being separated, kept apart in so many ways, right? Lockdown, can't go to church, can't go to school. You can go to the bar or the strip club though, right? Remember that? But Moms for Liberty started having meetings, and we did them in person. And so one of the things that we do at our meetings is something called a Madison Minute. It's important for us to remind ourselves and to teach our children about the founding principles and the foundation of this country. And so Meg Weinberger, who is a friend, the chapter chair of the Palm Beach County of Moms for Liberty and currently running for Florida House, will join us today to share a Madison Minute.
Good afternoon. Well, I have to say, I am a wife and mom to two amazing daughters. I'm a foster parent and a mentor to many other amazing children. Running for the Florida State House is something I never imagined doing. Recently endorsed by President Donald J. Trump and Representative Byron Donalds, but he held out for President Trump. I think it's very important. This is the time for all of us to unite and fight for the America First agenda. Thank you, Tiffany and Tina, Pat, Erica, if you're out there, Catalina, thank you for your guidance and mentorship. I'm doing something I never imagined doing, but if you want something done, ask a mom, right? And thank you to all of the Moms for Liberty joyful warriors that are fighting for our children. My Madison Minute. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of men and women. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Thomas Paine, The Crisis. God bless you all. Thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage Tiffany Justice.
Now I have the pleasure of introducing someone very kind. I ran into him at the airport in Washington, D.C., if you believe it, Governor Scott Walker, your 45th governor of Wisconsin. Let's give him a round of applause. A couple months ago, I said, Governor Walker, I want to do this event during the RNC. I don't know what issues will be covered on the convention stage, but Moms for Liberty members are concerned and want to talk to the people. Would you be interested in helping us with this event? Would Young America's Foundation serve as a sponsor? And would you help us to welcome everyone to your beautiful state? And so without further ado, Governor Scott Walker.
Hello. Welcome, everybody, to the great state of Wisconsin. We're so happy to have you here in the city of Milwaukee. Have you had a good time thus far? Yeah. We made it a little bit cooler for you today. A lot of you think it's only cold in the state of Wisconsin. We get all 4 seasons, sometimes all in the same week, but we're glad to have you here. And we're particularly glad to be with Moms for Liberty and part of this town hall and welcoming you here and being part of this great event. In fact, in a minute, you're going to hear from an impressive panel, not the least of which is our great friend and wonderful U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, who's from the great state of Wisconsin as well. A real champion. But I want to welcome you with a couple quick comments. As Tiffany mentioned, we're proud to be partnering not on this event, but with other activities at Young America's Foundation with Moms for Liberty. It's appropriate because what we do is we train the next generation of leaders in the fight for freedom. We help young people in college and high school and now middle school students with conferences, with lectures, with programs, whether it's in our nation's capital where a bunch of our college students will be next week, whether it's just this next weekend down at Dixon, Illinois, the home where Ronald Reagan grew up in, just about 2 hours from here. We have some of our interns from there, here today as well. Or in a few weeks, I'll be back out at the Reagan Ranch. You know, the ranch, the Western White House that the Reagans had during their presidency, we actually took that over a quarter century ago. And we have programs there, again, for college, high school, and middle school students, talking about individual liberties, free enterprise, strong national defense, and traditional American values. Our students for years have seen just the attacks, not just on conservative values, but on even just free speech. And so we're natural allies with Moms for Liberty. What a great partnership. In fact, we took it a step further. Recently, we had an amazing win they're going to talk some more about. But we went to court together with Moms for Liberty against the Biden administration. I don't know if you saw it, but yeah. That's right, against the Biden administration. They made a change to Title IX, which is actually anti-women. Anti-women. They're actually, not only have they made the change, but they take it so far that a student could be charged for speaking out and concern about a man, someone who was born a man, trying to compete against someone born as a woman. Now, the good news is we poll even in college students today, not just our students, nationwide, college students overwhelmingly say it's not fair for someone born a man to compete against someone a woman. So even college students get it. We won that initial part of that case. We need even more efforts like that going forward to succeed. We're going to do that. This is the right city to be in. Last night I sat with Tommy Thompson, the former governor. He helped lead the charge for school choice here 34 years ago. We expanded that. That was about empowering parents here in Milwaukee, and eventually, as governor, expanded statewide. Moms for Liberty is helping to do that, not just in educational choice and freedom, but with standing up for the rights of parents, particularly moms, but parents and grandparents all across this great country. Thank you for being here and being a part of supporting that effort as well. God bless.
Sometimes there's the voice of God, they call that, and sometimes there isn't. So I am joined by my good friend, John Solomon of Real America's Voice.
Good to see you all.
And some pretty amazing elected officials. Come on, Byron. He was busy. Byron's been very busy. If you didn't hear him speak last night, he had an amazing speech on the convention stage, and we were all so incredibly proud to watch him speak. Please, let's have a seat. And so, you know, pulling off events like this, going on TV a lot, I had never done anything like that in my life. And I met John, and he's been such a good friend, and he's given me advice. He's been an amazing mentor. And I said, what do you think we should do? Should we get this beautiful, beautiful place? Look at this amazing building, and should we try to do an event? And he said, heck yeah, Tiffany, try to do an event, right?
It's
so
exactly
thank you to John.
So actually, I took my wife here from one of our first dates, believe it or not. Yeah?
Really?
Long, long time ago, yeah.
That's awesome.
So
we're joined by some amazing elected officials. Harriet Hageman is in the first seat from Wyoming, a House representative. Harriet represents the beautiful state of Wyoming, and Harriet sits on the Constitution and Limited Limited Government Subcommittee that I testified in front of when I had to go and tell America that the FBI was contacting moms after they spoke at school board meetings. So thank you for coming, Harriet. Byron Donalds from Florida, a good friend of Moms for Liberty. Byron currently serves in the House of Representatives, and he represents Florida's 19th Congressional District along Florida's Gulf Coast. He's a dad and has 3 boys, and his beautiful wife, Erica, is a good friend of Moms for Liberty. And then Senator Ron Johnson. You have like home advantage here. I don't know what to say about that, but you're amazing U.S. Senator who's been serving since 2010 after running a successful business. And I heard you started on the Chamber of Commerce, kind of tipping your toe into some of the different representative things that you've done. And so we want to talk about business in Wisconsin today. So I want to start by talking about the historic moment that we're currently living in. I think we're all going to be able to remember where we were when President Trump was shot. And we could be in a very different place today if God had not intervened. So Moms for Liberty has been the target of a lot of weaponization.
Yes, they have.
And when I told Scott Pelley, is CBS News here? I hope CBS is here. When I told Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes that the FBI had contacted one of our moms, had called on the phone, he said, no, they didn't. And I said, no, sir, they did. He said, the FBI doesn't call people. That's a lie. And I said, no, sir, in fact, they did. And we dropped it, but CBS, you might want to pull that video and see that. We've been doxxed. We've received multiple death threats. And what we stand for is liberty. It's in our name. It's who we are. We want parents to have a voice in their kids' schools. So my question is this. Do you think part of the unthinkable violence against our American president, former president, we saw this weekend, comes from years of labeling anyone who stands for freedom, like President Trump does, like we do, as a threat to democracy? And I'd like to hear from all of you. Harriet, if you'd like to start.
I absolutely do. I think that we're in a very strange moment in time, in the sense that if you believe in freedom and liberty, they call us fascists. And they put President Trump on the cover of a magazine, equating him to Hitler. And as I have said over and over again, there is only one Hitler. And every time that you compare someone to that, you are really denigrating what happened during World War II. It is totally ahistorical. And it's a level of slander and libel that is beyond the pale. But when you have the media as well as political leaders who continuously state that we are a threat to democracy, even though we're not a democracy, they don't understand that yet, but that we are a threat to democracy, that we're a threat to freedom, that we're going to start throwing people in jail and we're going to imprison them if we get elected, not focusing on policy. And I think that's the significant issue here, is that they have demonized us for so many years because they can't beat us on policy. If I stand on a debate stage with a Democrat and I talk about policy, whether it is regulatory reform or what the FBI has been doing since 9/11, or the ways in which our government has been weaponized against us, I can win that debate any day of the week. I can talk about policy. I can address policy. They don't want that debate. They want to demonize me as someone who is anti-woman, as absurd as that may be, or that I believe in fascism, which is even more absurd than that. But that's what they have done. They are attempting to otherize us. They are attempting to make it so that people will not vote for us purely out of fear rather than out of policy, and that needs to change.
Byron, you spend a lot of time with the president. Your family's with you a lot. What comes into your mind when you see this violence that's rising and the threats against us?
Well, first of all, what Harriet said is absolutely correct. And Harriet, thank you for joining us in Congress. Yes. I thank you so much for being here with us, really, seriously. She's a phenomenal member, everybody, phenomenal member.
Thank you.
I will tell you that on Saturday, we were at home kind of getting ready to come here to Milwaukee, and the TV, it wasn't on news. I was decompressing. We were kind of all decompressing, getting ourselves prepared for the convention, and my wife's mother called. And I could hear her voice, and it was frantic. And so we turn the TV on, and at that point, you're just in shock. My wife and I, we were in Miami at the rally in Doral a few days before. We've been with President Trump on the road. And when that occurs, everybody is shaken. Everybody's shaken because at this point you understand that the level of I don't want to say it vitriol, I will say the level of venom has reached a point where now you have somebody deciding to take lives into their own hand. President Trump, really by the grace of God, is with us today. But really, I told him that last night. I said, sir, the hand of God is on you. But you have Corey Comparatone, who lost his life at that rally, protecting his wife and his daughter. And so when that type of venom in our politics reaches its fever pitch, where now you have incidents where you have one person trying to literally snuff out the life of another, that's when it's gone too far. I think that we can have our disagreements in politics, all well and good. We're going to do that. But there is a respect and there is a tolerance that we must have as Americans, even when we vehemently disagree. I think that, you know, I'm quite sure Senator Johnson has had it. I've had it. Harriet, if you have not had them, Harriet, they're coming at some point. The threats that you get to your office line, people who want to threaten you or threaten your family, we take that stuff seriously. But I think the message you're going to hear Thursday night from the president, but overall is we are one America. We are a united people who are focused on making our country great. And you can have your disagreements, but at the end of the day, we do not want to end the lives of other people in our country. I think that's got to be our mode going forward. In terms of the shakenness, at that point, you have a decision to make. Are you going to stand firm and continue to fight for this country to be that more perfect union? Or are you going to recede into the background? And I think that when you have, whether it's a gunman or these radical activists who protest you guys here at Moms for Liberty and all that stuff, you have a decision you're going to make. Are you going to stand firm and fight for this country? And I'll tell you that President Trump is going to stand firm and fight for this country. I stand with him. J.D. Vance stands with him. We're gonna do the right thing and make sure that this country is great for everybody.
Thank you, Congressman. Senator, a question I get often when I'm out on the street: why can't government get things right? We've gone through an era where public health institutions that we gave hundreds of billions of dollars to got things wrong on COVID. We got the FBI that can't even get basic applications for search warrants right. We have a Secret Service that couldn't even protect an obvious sniper's perch. There's a moment in this election where I think people are voting for a difference in government, not just a difference in candidates. What's the best advice you have for people here to make a difference in terms of reshaping and fixing a government that seems often out of control?
So I come from small business, small to medium size. And even though large companies have all kinds of resources and can sometimes be difficult to compete against, it's often very easy to compete against them because they're big old bureaucracies. You know, the vision of our founding fathers was government close to the governed at the state and local level, where it was going to be more efficient, more effective, more accountable. I first want to thank Moms for Liberty for doing what you're doing, for holding this conference. Welcome everybody to Milwaukee and Wisconsin. But to veer off and kind of answer the first question, there's no doubt the vitriol in our politics is not helpful. But once again, when you see and we'll see more about the shooter, the initial interviews is this is a loner in probably a large school, being bullied all the time. And I'm hoping if there's one result from Moms for Liberty, and this is actually going to all be tied together here, is we start moving away from these massive, large schools, and we start moving more toward, the old one-room schoolhouse. My daughter with our grandkids, they started an Acton Academy, which is by and large a one-room schoolhouse, and they're just oversubscribed. People can't get enough of it. It used to be an oddity that people would homeschool. Now more people are doing so because during COVID, parents are looking over the shoulder of their kids and they're seeing what these large schools, these large bureaucracies that get completely out of control and unaccountable. Does that ring a bell with anybody? The federal government at just about every level, all these schools. So from my standpoint, it is about size. It's about the inefficiency of bureaucratic institutions at every level. And so I would love to see our businesses, all this consolidation is not good, becomes less competitive. These businesses become, again, sclerotic and uncompetitive. But that would be the thing I'd like to see our society move in, and more involved in community. With the advent of the internet, and it's brought wonderful things. Okay, internet's a marvel, but comes with it the lack of socialization, the vitriol on social media that also can ostracize and bully children. So it's really about, from my standpoint, regaining our communities at a local level, and that's where our government should be as well.
So you brought up education. We're going to talk a little bit about, Byron, your convention speech last night. You started off by talking about your mom and how important your mom is to you, and how important her guiding hand in your education has been. And so I'd just love to hear a little bit about your vision for the future of American education as a dad, as a former student, a dad married to someone who's a pioneer in educational freedom, Eric Donalds, who does amazing work. So love to hear from you.
So first, let me give the non-convention speech. My mom is tough, man. She did not. Woo. Mom, I love you.
Needed to be.
She needed to be, you know. My mom is a tough lady, and for her, education was my way out of the inner city. My mom didn't want me to be a statistic in the streets of Brooklyn, New York. She wanted me to be able to move past just the crime and the issues that are around you when you grow up in the inner city. As an inner city kid, you have to grow up fast because you have to be able to see all angles and all things. And my mother just wanted a better life for me, and she knew I was smart, and she knew I was capable, but she had to just direct me in environments that could make that happen. When in 1984, 1985, in Brooklyn, New York, there was no such thing as school choice. No. It didn't exist. So for her, she had to make the decision to sacrifice cars and vacations, renting a bigger place and all that kind of stuff because she wanted to put her son in an environment where he can excel. My first private school was a brownstone in Flatbush, Brooklyn. That was an all-black private school. The lady that ran it, Miss Pendarvis, I shudder to remember Miss Pendarvis. God bless her. God bless her, because she got me on the straight and narrow in a lot of different ways. That's back when you could paddle. Like, you could paddle back then. And so, all those environments helped to really shape me. My mother went on to become a teacher. She went on to become an administrator and assistant principal in the public system, the public education system in New York. In one of the schools that she was at, it was a hybrid building where one half was the traditional public school, the other half was a charter school. And the kids could test to go into the charter schools. And she would call me and be amazed about how much better the kids were doing in the charter school environment and the public school environment. When I got elected to the State House, and my wife Erica, who does tremendous work in education, see you over there, honey, love you. But the tremendous work that she does in education, at first, I was charter focused, but as I went on in my evolution, I really became choice focused. Yeah. What you really want is an economy for education, like you have an economy for telecommunications, like you have an economy for housing, not like how you have an economy in medicine, because it's not really an economy, and that's one of the reasons why it's bloated and the prices continue to rise. But when you have true economies where people can buy and choose services, what ends up happening is the price per student or the price per credit hour actually goes down, but the quality goes up. And I firmly believe, whether it's Florida, Arizona, so many other states are now following that model. The true vision for our country is having an economy of education where parents are at the head of the line, choosing the environment for their child. And in that environment, then you get down to what you're talking about, Senator, of having the smaller schools or the more functional schools for that individual child to find their strengths, to find their talents, and to find success in our country.
Yeah, so important. As a young reporter, we're sitting in the home of the original school choice movement. It was here in Milwaukee. A Democratic state lawmaker named Polly Williams reached across the aisle to a Republican governor named Tommy Thompson, and that gave birth to an extraordinary movement. We're in the second generation now of school choice. It's school choice 2.0. Congressman, I want to ask you, what are the things that members of Congress are talking about to move things forward, like these experiments in Oklahoma? There's a lot on the table. Does Congress see it?
I think that we have to acknowledge how we got here. So I'm going to give away my age. I graduated from high school in 1981. What happened in 1980? The creation of the Federal Department of Education. So I went to a small school. I graduated from Lingo Fort Laramie High School. My graduating class was about 30 students, but I had phenomenal teachers. But they were not dictated to by the federal government. It was a state issue, and it was state controlled, and it was controlled by our school boards. So coming from Wyoming, most of our schools are pretty small. We don't have very many big cities. So my story is pretty common in the state of Wyoming. We have a young woman right here who was homeschooled, who is highly, highly successful, as has her sister been. My mother was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse from 1946 to 1952 in Montana, where she taught 1st through 8th grade in one room, survived the 1949 blizzard, taking care of children as she went through that, had highly successful students. I went to Casper College on a livestock judging scholarship. I went to the University of Wyoming, received a bachelor's degree. I received my law degree, and I practiced law for 34 years as a trial attorney, primarily against the federal government, before I became a member of Congress. In other words, we know how to educate kids. We know what to do. We know how to teach. We know. I can tell you the name of every single teacher I ever had, because they were phenomenal teachers, because they were very, very good at their craft. They cared about their community. They cared about their families. They were teaching their own children as well as their friends, their best friends' children. But the fundamental problem that we have in the United States was the creation of the Federal Department of Education. And I have a speech. I talk about inflection points in the United States that changed the trajectory of our country. And one of them was what happened in 1980 when Jimmy Carter created the Federal Department of Education. So I am actually working with Thomas Massie, and he has done a bill to abolish the Federal Department of Education. Now, that's a long-term plan, because that's an $80 billion behemoth that we're going to have to figure out what to do. This isn't an easy solution. I know that. I'm not silly. I'm not stupid. But I recognize that we've got to start somewhere. And if we're going to do it, we've got to bring education back where people care. As the senator has said, you're focusing on small schools because you're focusing on community. You're focusing on the fact that we are responsible for each other. I come from a very large state, but I come from a very small population. And we care about each other, and as a result, everybody is an educator in our state, whether they're in education or not, because it's our responsibility to do that. And that's why I do agree with you that it is incredibly important that we go to that model, the model that you've talked about, school choice, whether it is a homeschooling program, or it is a charter school program, or it is simply a public school that recognizes that our ability to educate, or our knowledge, our ability to educate kids is something that's inculcated in us from the time that we're very young. We're all educators. Every single person in this room is an educator, whether you have children or not. We educate when we care about our communities. And that's why I think that it is so important on so many different levels that we have to take power out of Washington, D.C. This is one of the places where we start. There are other areas as well, and I've got a lot of other ideas. But education is a really good place to start to return this power to the communities and to return the power to the parents and the people who care enough about their children to make sure that we're not raising kids like that kid that did this on Saturday.
Thank you. So I would like to do a panel similar to this at the Democratic National Convention. So far, I've had no luck having any legislators being willing to join me. Yeah, there you go. But Byron and Senator Johnson, to you, how have these issues become so partisan? And are there ways that we can help you in our own communities to try to make progress in Congress to move our country forward?
It's not a very easy question. I mean, I can't explain the level of vitriol in our politics today. You've got two visions for America. You've got one of the left that wants to control people's lives. I don't get it. I mean, my life is enough of a challenge to control myself. Why would I want to control somebody else's life? But that's what the left wants. They want to consolidate power. You know, we're the party of freedom, which entails responsibility. So it's very difficult to really, I can't get inside the mind of a leftist. It just makes no sense to me. But I know it's destructive. And you know, we have the model that works. You know, to kind of get back to the school choice, that there are two areas of our economy that we are always dissatisfied with, right? Education and healthcare. You can think about it, what are the two common denominators of both of those? They've pretty well removed the benefit of free market competition in both. You know, I used to run a plastics manufacturing plant. I would have loved to have been a monopolist, because if I was, you know, my prices would have been a whole lot higher. my quality and customer service level would have been a whole lot less. So that's what a free market competition does. It lowers price, improves quality and customer service. Gee, isn't that what we'd like to have for healthcare and education, which is why school choice should be universal. You would, in Milwaukee, I don't know the latest figure, but it is well over $20,000 per pupil, and the schools are failing. Can you imagine if you gave a responsible adult, 20 kids and $25,000 a kid, $500,000, can you educate these people? Yeah, I can do a really good job, okay? But our education systems fail because, again, they're these massive bureaucratic institutions where the bureaucrats are far more interested in their job, their power, than actually perform. Let's face it, teachers' unions are not about educating kids, they're about benefiting themselves. So again, there you go. There's the difference in really our world vision. Bigness, control, bureaucracy, versus the vision of our founding fathers, God-given inalienable rights, and then allowing us to use those rights to dream and aspire and build and create this marvel of a country. And we're just on the right side. Unfortunately, the media and all these institutions have been infiltrated by the left, and they've got an awful lot of power, and it's not a level playing field right now.
I mean, the only thing I'll add to that, Tiffany, just specific, the reason why you're not getting that DNC invite is because of the teachers' union. Because with the teachers' unions, and I think it's important, you have the teachers, and then you have the union. Yeah. Those are two different things. They are. The teachers, they're just trying to do their job, man. They're trying to do their job. They love these kids. They're trying to educate them. I think a lot of stuff that they get either from the unions or from teacher training courses, et cetera, some of that stuff is a lot of foolishness and doesn't really help actually educate children. But there are a lot of teachers in our country who really have Americans' children at heart and want them to do great. The union is focused on union power. And I think it's important. We always got to separate that. And so the Democrats, let's also be very blunt, they can't win elections without the power of unions, specifically the teachers' union, which is basically the public sector unions. They need that power. They need that machine, if you will, for them to turn out votes in elections. This is why they will never go against the union. But the thing that is changing in America is that you have more parents, and this is where Moms for Liberty has been a true leader and a true champion in this. You have more parents in our country who are saying, you know what? My kid deserves more, and at least these ladies are trying to find a way for my kid to get more. And that's the real power of the movement. I think you're going to see this movement continue to grow. The inertia is going to continue to grow. And I was speaking with, it was years ago when I was in the state legislature, I was speaking with a large group of teachers. It was the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. It was their symposium, and it was me versus the head of the teachers union in the state of Florida at the time. And you could imagine, I was in a tough room. But what I told all of those sorors, what I told all those teachers in that room was, even in an economy of education, you're still going to have a public school system. You are. Because you have too much infrastructure. You have so many classrooms. You have so many schools. You have fields. You have all of the infrastructure that has been funded by taxpayer dollars. You're not going anywhere, frankly, for at least 70 years. That's just the way the whole infrastructure model has been developed. But it would be in the best interest of the public school system as well, because they would see these micro schools and these other ventures doing amazing things. And a funny thing happens when competition hits the scene. It makes everybody better. So I think everybody being better has to be our message and our mission going forward.
Yeah, very wise.
I was just going to ask you, Representative Hageman, right now, where we are in America with education, the things that we're talking about, right, the partisanship, how can what does it mean, first of all, for people to support you? When you go home and you hear from your constituents, I want people to understand that this is a relationship. We're building a grassroots army at Moms for Liberty. People who are elected, you can't do it by yourselves. You need us on the ground. And so talk a little bit about that. And then if we could just close and say, how can we help you to accomplish your goals going forward?
So I also come from a long line of teachers and educators. My grandmother, my mother, my sisters, my sister-in-laws, long line of educators. And they can tell you that education has changed over time because we are getting to be, we're bringing things in that should not be about, that are not about education, have nothing to do with education. And that's the federalization part of it. As far as what I hear is that what happened in 2020 when they closed down the schools and it gave everybody a glimpse into what was actually happening in our education systems, I think that it was actually a seismic shift. And as drastic and as horrible as that was, and the long-term consequences of it, we're going to be feeling for decades. I feel my heart breaks for the children who had to suffer through what happened during that period of time. But it also helped to create organizations like this. It woke people up to what was actually going on. Because it isn't just the Department of Education that is failing us. There are many other federal agencies that are failing us. We just don't have them affecting our children or so directly that you could actually watch it on a Zoom screen and see what was happening. So people are very, very concerned about this. They love the idea of the grassroots organizations that are standing up and people are saying we're not going to take this anymore. So I do town halls around the state of Wyoming, and it's a big state. I have 23 counties. But when I go in there, I have Moms for Liberty at almost every single event that I have. Someone from Wyoming who has started a chapter, or else they're traveling to go to my town halls. And we are talking about education and what we need to improve the situation. So keep doing what you're doing. Get the message out there. What we're doing is protecting children. No one should disagree with that. And that's why when you say, how did this become a partisan issue? I think we need to ask the other side. Because it shouldn't be a partisan issue. I want to protect your children as much as you want to protect mine. That is the community that I am talking about. Whether it is in Lingle, Fort Laramie, Wyoming, or I'm in New York City, it doesn't matter where I am. I want the best thing for the children in this country. That is the future. That's how we continue this grand experiment of this constitutional republic that has survived for 248 years. I want to make sure that we have the health and well-being of our children as front and center. So continue doing what you're doing. Continue to fight for our kids. Continue to fight for our families, because it really is what sets us apart from every other country on earth, is that we have the freedom to take care of our kids, to make sure that they are getting the best education. We need to keep fighting for it.
I told y'all Harriet was awesome. I told you. I told you.
You're right. Yeah.
Real quick. And this is not on the topic we're discussing, but Harriet did bring up Thomas Massie. I'm not sure if people really know this, but Thomas Massie is one of the great members of Congress. He lost his, he lost his wife about a week and a half ago. She died unexpectedly. So we would ask all of you to just keep Thomas and his family in your prayers while they're going through this time period. That was the love of his life, and it was a shock to him and a shock to his family. So please make sure you pray for Thomas Massie. He's a great American. Thank you.
Yes, a big tragedy. All right, we're out of time. We're going to go down one rapid-fire question here. We're 4 months from election. If the wise people of America give Republicans the House, the Senate, and the White House, what's one thing you think that Congress can get done in the first year that will make the moms and dads, the grandmas and grandpas, and the aunts and uncles in this audience feel like there's progress towards this education and parents? Start with you, Senator.
So what we have to get done is we've got about a $4 trillion tax increase facing us in 2026 because we weren't able to make all the tax cuts permanent. So we need to run the table so we can have reconciliation. And the number one criteria for what we do should be to simplify and rationalize our tax code, but whatever we do, we need to make it permanent.
I would say it's really twofold, and that's, Senator's absolutely correct. The big one is we have to be able to secure this border and send a lot of people back to their countries.
But President Trump will do that.
Oh, I know, he's going to do that.
We're not going to get help from Senate Democrats.
But I will tell you, the deportation aspects of this are going to be really important because in a lot of our inner city schools throughout the country, you have young kids who are already a year or 2 years behind. Now they're having to compete for resources with young kids who are in the country illegally because of what Joe Biden has done. And that's some of the pressure Harriet was talking about. The big thing is that first step in terms of how are you going to deal with Title I funding actually going to the kids who truly need it in our country and redirecting that in a lot of respects around the bureaucracy and directly to the families that need it most.
I think one of the most important things we can do is return power to the people and to the states, and we need to take power away from unelected bureaucrats.
And the Supreme Court began that process, right?
Yes,
yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support at Moms for Liberty, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Congressman, thank you. It was such an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Congressman, thank you so much. Senator, thank you. Good
That
to
was
see you.
really fun.
Thank you very much.
You're awesome.
Thank you. This program and this day today is possible because of some very kind and generous sponsors, one of which is Public Square. Michael Seifert is the founder and CEO and president at Public Square. Under Michael's dynamic leadership and after going public on the New York Stock Exchange only 30 months after its startup status, Public Square now hosts 6 wholly owned businesses, including Cordova and EveryLife, which is the fastest growing baby brand in the world. Michael's commitment to truth, liberty, and conservative principles drives everything he undertakes as he strives to make a positive impact on those around him while leaving a lasting legacy in both the tech and political spheres. I welcome to the stage to tell you a little bit more about Public Square, Michael Seifert.
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? Good to see you all. My name is Michael Seifert, and I'm the CEO and founder of Public Square and a few other businesses as well called EveryLife and Cordova. I'm going to tell you a little bit about those, but I actually want to speak mostly today about the power of moms. My wife is a mother. We actually had our first baby 20 months ago. It was incredible. I'm loving it. I'm so grateful for Moms for Liberty because they have rightly recognized that if you want to change the country, you have to capture the hearts and minds of moms and turn that into proactive action that actually penetrates the school system, the educational world more broadly, the economy, the political arena. And we actually, as a business, in 3 years, in fact, we only launched about 2 years ago. We're the nation's largest marketplace of businesses, over 80,000 businesses that celebrate life, faith, family, freedom. That way you can spend your hard-earned money with businesses that are not opposed to your worldview, but actually celebrate your worldview and protect Main Street America while they're at it. And I'm here to tell you, we never could have built the business that we have built today. We grew faster to 1 million members than Twitter, Airbnb, Spotify, purely because the power of moms. It's amazing. I was actually initially awakened to this concept of a parallel economy or a freedom economy that would reject the tenets of ESG and the sort of woke-driven capital and instead embrace this economy that's centered on the values that made our country so strong. I was originally inspired to this idea all the way back in 2014. I was driving in St. Louis, Missouri, visiting some family, and I passed a Chick-fil-A. It was a Tuesday morning at 11 a.m., so breakfast had passed. It was that weird in-between time between breakfast and lunch. And I look to my right. I'm on the phone in the car. I look to the right, and there's a 2-hour line out the door of Chick-fil-A. It's like, what the heck is going on? So I pull over, I get off the phone, and I Google what's happening at Chick-fil-A today. Turns out it was National Protest Chick-fil-A Day. You remember that? You know what's funny? The 2-hour line out the Chick-fil-A, those weren't protesters. They were supporters, taking time out of their jobs. They had lawn chairs, umbrellas, the whole nine, to support Chick-fil-A, mostly driven, by the way, of moms. Turns out it was Chick-fil-A's most successful day to date. Fast forward to 2020. Y'all know Goya? You know Goya? Great food. Largest provider of Latin American food in the United States. CEO Bob. Great man, a real patriot. He came out in 2020 and was asked in an interview, who are you voting for? And he said, I'm voting for President Trump. Sue me. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman from New York City. Yeah, those boos are merited. She came out and said, as a representative of women across the country and as a representative more specifically of Latina women or Latinx women or whatever it's called, of Latina women around this country, I call for a boycott of Goya. You remember this? You remember what happened after? It led to the most successful month Goya had ever had. To the point, by the way, that the CEO hung up AOC's picture in the hallway and gave her Employee of the Month. It was awesome. You know who powered that? That hopeful demonstration of not even a boycott, but an actual boycott, a surgence of supporting something they believed in, to stand with somebody in a company that made them feel like they're not alone in their values. Mostly moms. Moms make over 70% of purchasing decisions for the household. Some of the husbands in the room are like, it's 100%. COVID comes around. We're in this awful situation around the country. They're targeting kids, massively disrupting their education environment. The gender nonsense starts coming in, compounding as well. The people that stood up against it, moms. California today, passed AB 1955. By the way, this is my home state, so it's very personal. California passed AB 1955. Gavin Newsom is saying that now it is illegal at the state level in California for any school district to require the school's teachers to notify the parents in the event that a child in their school system says that they're transitioning. A teacher now not only doesn't have to tell the parents, it's illegal for the school to even ask the teachers to tell the parents. The state wants to teach your children, and they want to own your children. You know who's spoken out the strongest against this? Moms. Guess what happened 30 minutes after that bill was passed today? The mom audience, the mama bears of our country, spoke loud and proud, and they got the attention of the wealthiest man in the world, Elon Musk. And 30 minutes ago, while we're sitting here, he announced that he is moving SpaceX and X out of California. The power of your activism knows no bounds. Target last year goes wild and decides to try to indoctrinate your kids along nonsense gender theory. The mom stood up. It led to Target's first quarterly earnings miss in 6 years. Their stock got downgraded twice because you stood up and took your dollars elsewhere. When we built our company, I had the idea for Public Square, a marketplace that would celebrate life, faith, family, freedom, that would not lecture you about politics, but instead would provide quality goods and services from American-owned small businesses. I had that idea, and when we launched this platform nationwide, July 4th of 2022, just over 2 years ago, sure enough, the people that built our company were the moms. It was incredible to witness. And then, you know what the moms ended up telling us? They said, hey, this marketplace is amazing. One brand that you don't have represented, or one industry you don't have represented on your marketplace, is actually baby goods. The moms told us that, believe it or not, and this one will blow you away, so I'm glad you're all sitting down. Did you know that every single major diaper brand in the United States today, either vocally or financially, supports abortion? Yep. All of them. So moms were coming to our site, and they were not finding diapers and wipes that wouldn't lecture them about abortion and take their money and spend it on abortion. They said, you guys should start a diaper brand. So you know what we did? We started a diaper brand. And I'm happy to tell you, Every Life, which is the brand that we started, just celebrated its 1-year anniversary on Monday. And that brand now is the fastest growing baby brand in the entire world. It has been, yeah, amen. In fact, 6 months in, Elon Musk, going back to Musk here, tweeted, having children is saving the world. We don't have a ton of money, limited budget, but I believe limitations breed creativity. So we got in the room with a group of moms that were consumers of ours and said, well, gosh, what should we do to really capture the nation's attention to celebrate this message that actually having children will save our country? Strong families build a strong nation. You know what we did? We got a billboard in Times Square. We put Elon's tweet up in the billboard in Times Square. We had a tweet above it that said, we at Every Life fully endorse this message. We believe having children is saving the world. We put it up there in Times Square for 30 minutes. We only spent $6,000 on the billboard. We got a mom mom audience to descend in Manhattan to video that billboard, tag Elon Musk, and you know who endorsed it? Elon Musk. Thanks to the power of the mom audience, this brand now is launching in South Korea in partnership with the largest retailers in that nation to become the official family brand of South Korea. All because the moms have celebrated a message, thousands of ambassadors, and have taken it around this country. Now, husbands, you have a lot of value too. I have a lot of value. We're called to lead. But at the end of the day, today, and this organization, Moms for Liberty, is about celebrating the moms that are building a new economy, the moms that are building a new education system, the moms that are building a new political way of doing things that actually celebrates and champions the generation coming after us and does not seek to indoctrinate them, distort their ideology, and ultimately co-opt them into their perverse political ideas. That is why Moms for Liberty is such a special organization. It's why we at Public Square and Every Life are so proud to support this wonderful organization. And I cannot tell you how strongly I firmly believe that the moms of this great nation will be directly responsible for the new American Renaissance era we're walking into. The mama bears are awake, and my child and her future children will be better off for it. So I'm going to show you a video of what we're doing at Public Square and Every Life. It is an absolute honor to be here, and I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the convention week. Thank you all.
Please welcome back to the stage Tiffany Justice and John Solomon.
All right. You guys, come on out. We'll all do it all together. That's good. All right, folks. The next panel, I've been blessed over the last 2 years. Look at this. We have 3 generals on stage. How about that? Yeah, very impressive. Over the last couple of years as a host on Real America's Voice, we've had some extraordinary litigations, cases that have really defended the Constitution, changed the course of history, and in some ways reined in bureaucrats who thought it was their government, not your government. These 3 folks here are right at the forefront of that constitutional fight. Joining me from the great state of Louisiana, the first female Attorney General in the history of the state, Attorney General Liz Murrill. Good to have you here today. This next guy may require a title change soon. We'll see how the election turns out. He's running for governor of West Virginia, but since 2013, right, sir? You've been the Attorney General of West Virginia, and one of the most important law cases in the last century in American history was brought by West Virginia. West Virginia versus EPA, the first major court ruling to rule in the regulatory state. Attorney General Patrick Morrison, good to have you here, sir. All right. And a newcomer, but he's on my show all the time because there's always a lawsuit. It seems like every couple of days, from the great state of Missouri, Attorney General Andrew Bailey. Great to have all 3 of you here today. Really excited. You're going to kick us off with a question, right?
Let's talk about Title IX. This is an issue that a number of attorneys general across the United States have been weighing in on. Moms for Liberty just got a preliminary injunction out of the 10th Circuit. That was Kansas, Utah, Alaska, Wyoming, that we were going to be able to stop Title IX from being implemented. It's supposed to happen August 1st. Title IX, a 52-year-old rule that was supposed to safeguard opportunities for women in education, in sports. In the Biden administration, the DOE has decided that they wanted to redefine sex to include gender identity and sexual orientation. Liz, I'll start with you. You and I spoke before the Supreme Court recently, saying we will not allow boys in our girls' sports teams, boys in our girls' bathrooms, and we will not allow schools to keep secrets from us as parents. Can you talk a little bit about what your state is doing to push back against the Biden administration?
Well, you know, just in the Title IX context, I mean, we've filed quite a number of lawsuits. I was the Solicitor General before I became Attorney General, and I think I'm up to over 40 lawsuits against this administration. That's maybe a conservative account, many of which I'm partnering, with my fellow attorney generals in. But the Title IX one was special. I mean, I was proud to say that 13 minutes after the rule was published, we had a lawsuit on file with a number of my state colleagues, and that this one in particular was the culmination of a number of prior attempts by this administration to change the meaning of sex and implement this. So I was grateful to have the partnership of our superintendent of education, Kay Brumley, who joined, and then we ended up with over 20 school boards who actually joined, and I represented them all, but it was just great to have such a strong coalition saying no. This is not only contrary to common sense, and it's unsafe, and it's legally wrong, but we will not comply. And that was kind of our message: is we will not comply, and we are confident that we will win this lawsuit, and we did. I mean, we got the first injunction. So.
Wonderful. General Morrissey, General Bailey, either of you like to weigh in on this issue?
Absolutely. So it's interesting because I think many of the AGs are very knee-deep in fighting back against the Biden Title IX issues. In West Virginia, we've been really busy defending our Save Women Sports law, which raises a lot of the same questions that are coming up on the federal level. And obviously, when our legislature had passed that, dealing with it, providing protection for women who are really worried about the loss of athletic opportunities, we went in and we had the opportunity to really build out a record as to why all of the efforts that legislatures have been engaged in over the last 50 years have been proper, because there have been sex-segregated sports for time immemorial. And in fact, Title IX built that framework in, and it's only in recent years where people are starting to say, let's try to have this hulking male play sports with women. And in West Virginia, our legislature got out in front of that. They passed a law barring that from happening. And then we went into court. We actually had an injunction immediately slapped against us, but then we went through a process and literally submitted 3,000 pages of evidence, 400 docket entries showing the biological differences between men and women, and we had a district court judge flip his position because he saw the evidence. Men indeed are different than women. What a concept. And I think we're very hopeful. This may actually be the first major case teed up, because we just filed a petition for cert at the U.S. Supreme Court last week, and we're hopeful we're going to get a good reaction from the court. There are a number of these cases. 25 states in the country have these laws defending the integrity of women's sports, and now we have a chance to get this teed up right before the Supreme Court. It's our hope that it takes off the table a lot of these radical Title IX proposals that are coming from the Biden administration. So the states are very deeply involved in this.
Yeah. It amazes me the woke left's war on women. You know, the left used to champion women's rights, and for more than 50 years, Title IX stood as a monument to women's equality. And it is under attack from the radical left. And they want to pervert the law to achieve a radical left-wing policy objective that they could never get through Congress. And it's not just that it's a bad policy position for public safety and fairness reasons and for federalism reasons, that it infringes upon states' rights to regulate their own athletic competitions, but it's a bigger problem than that. It's a usurpation of power by this administration, using an unelected bureaucratic empire, the administrative state, this soft despotism. Our founders certainly understood that diffusing power over three co-equal branches of government was essential to maximizing our individual liberties. And when you have unelected bureaucrats unaccountable to the people who are making these types of rules, and when it directly contradicts with the plain text of the statutes, you've got constitutional, legal, and policy problems. Was proud to file suit, and we're going to keep fighting on this issue. And I think that our colleague that I filed suit with, Tim Griffin in Arkansas, said it best at our press conference. He said, "Who is for this?
Right.
Who thinks this is a good idea?"
Yeah. I think a lot of people in California are asking that question this morning. Last night, Governor Newsom signed a bill that basically said bureaucrats know better than parents what to do with children. That sentiment is sweeping across the Democratic Party in many states. I'd like to go all the way down the line, start with you, General Bailey, come back this way. How are each of you trying to fight that sentiment in the courts?
Yeah, you know, I think it's a distinction in just some basic, fundamental, irreducible, axiomatic principles of belief. I believe that our rights come from God, not man. And that I believe our Constitution is to protect us from the government, and the government exists to protect our rights. And anybody who can't say that clearly is on the wrong side of that issue, and the left has clearly rejected that approach.
General Morrissey, I know you've been fighting this for a long time. You've seen it.
Absolutely. Look, I think it's amazing that for such a long time in our country's history, everyone seemed to know the difference between men and women. And now, the concept that you're going to segregate sports, locker rooms, changing rooms, and that it's not correct to distinguish on the basis of biology, this is an absurd concept. And so we need to be able to say that. I read about Governor Newsom signing that into law, and I think I sent a note to my team. I say, in a few months when I'm governor, we're going to put protections in place against all that nonsense, because we have to make sure that the insanity where you go into a classroom and you have people that the kids are saying, well, I have to be called by a particular pronoun and person. We have to restore sanity. And one of the things that I think state attorneys general do is that we assert the proper constitutional governance. So these issues ideally wouldn't have to be addressed on the national level, because most of the problems in our society should be addressed at the local level, the state level. So that's why I can speak to this as hopefully the next governor of West Virginia. In West Virginia, we're going to be basing our decisions still on biology for the foreseeable future.
How about that? General Merle?
You know, I think that what we're fighting, part of what we're fighting for, obviously we are not the only ones we're never going to win this fight if it's all just being a court fight.
Right.
But we're in the courts and we're fighting to maintain the decision-making power where it belongs, with parents, with families, with, you know, our local elected officials to decide curriculum and things like that. And what we've seen is a movement over time to try and nationalize curriculum decisions, and at the end of the day, what this Title IX rule did was it was going to socialize and institutionalize and normalize conduct teaching, starting in kindergarten and nursery school, like where these kids were going to be socialized at a very, very young age to say things like, what's your pronoun? I mean, you think about a kindergartner saying, what's your pronouns? I mean, it is changing the way their brains are wired. And so at the end of the day, like, we have to fight this in the courts, but what we're fighting for is to keep control, and the people we need most involved in this fight are you.
That's right.
Because we aren't going to win this fight in a courtroom. We're going to win the ability to fight another day in the courtroom, and we're going to win the fight in the kindergarten classroom and in the school boards and in our local, you know, involvement where we say no.
So, yes, sir.
I just wanted to amplify Liz's point. So interestingly, in West Virginia, as this issue was reaching a fevered pitch, we have a scenario where there is a biological male identifying as a female. And one of the most powerful moments in West Virginia over the last year is that there were 5 little young women. These are brave, courageous women. They actually decided they were not going to participate in the track meet. They were protesting because it was fundamentally unfair. It went viral. And I will tell you, to Liz's point, we win this not just in the courts of law, we win this by our kids, our parents, teachers, people across the country recognizing the basic differences here and why this is an all-in cause.
So I'm going to jump in here and say, I promise you, if you can stand up and hold the torch of liberty and share that message in your community, you are not the only one that is thinking that, but you need to stand up and tell the truth on this issue. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
General Bailey, You have been shown yourself to be in a real champion of the First Amendment. And we talked about school boards for a minute. You're the top cops in your states, right? Our mics were being shut off left and right. We had moms and dads getting up at school board meetings concerned about the curriculum, concerned about schools being shut down or forced masking, quarantining. We cannot stop talking about COVID. We need to continue to talk about and make sure people remember how horrible it was so it never happens again. But what were your thoughts as you saw school board members directing police to escort parents out of rooms and to shut down mics?
Yeah, disgusted. In Missouri, we don't co-parent with the government.
That's right.
Let me say this, as a parent of 4 small children, this is personal for me. I'm invested in this issue personally and professionally. And so let me give you an example where the rubber hits the road. We had a school district in Wentzville, Missouri, that was going to adopt a radical transgender bathroom policy. And they were going to do it behind closed doors without meeting the public notice and meeting requirement and allowing the parents to have a voice in that process. That is illegal. That violates Missouri's open meetings law that the Attorney General's office has broad enforcement authority over. And luckily, we had some board members who were whistleblowers who came forward and swore out affidavits saying, this is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. And you know what the other school board members and the superintendent's response was? It's none of the parents' darn business. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? So we filed suit. We put a stop to it. The superintendent has resigned, and we're not done yet. Yeah, that's right. We're not done yet. And that's just the first piece because the fight goes on. So we're going to force the board to hold meetings, reject that kind of radical transgender ideology, give the parents a voice in the process, respect parental rights. But then you have this other thing that's going on where the members of the school district, so not the school board, not the elected members, but kind of the deep state, began retaliating with an investigation against the school board members that blew the whistle. So we had to move in and use whistleblower protection laws to then protect those affiants who were willing to come forward and say that that what had happened was wrong. So it's a fight on all fronts on this issue, and we're going to respect parental rights in the state of Missouri, ensuring not only the safety of the children in the public education system, but also that the things they're exposed to are consistent with the parents' values. It's a simple formula.
Yeah. So many parents looking for that common sense. It just seems to have escaped so many places. General Merrill, I think a lot of people heard about this decision a couple weeks ago, Chevron doctrine. It sounds, that must be something to do with oil. What's that about? Well, it does. I guess it started with oil, but it really is a fundamental win for individual rights and the crushing of sort of a very large administrative state. You're quarterbacking lots of lawsuits. How does the Supreme Court's ruling there begin to empower parents against bureaucrats, parents against federal agencies? It seems like this is another landmark decision like a West Virginia EPA.
It absolutely is a landmark decision. And, for a little kind of background for those of you who don't know anything about Chevron deference, Chevron deference is just a concept that's implemented by the courts to give deference to administrative agencies on their interpretation of regulations or statutes. And what the Loper-Bright decision came out and said, and I think there's a companion case that with it, but Loper-Bright is the shorthand name that we use for this decision that basically put power back in the courts to say what the law is. And this is a concept that goes back to Marbury versus Madison, where the Supreme Court said, no, it's our job under separation of powers. It is our job to interpret the law and say what the law is. And so all they did was reset what should have always been the standard, which gives us a chance to go into court and not basically be fighting with one hand tied behind our back already, because the court is going to say, well, if the agency says this is what it means, then we have to give deference to the agency. And now they said, no, you don't have to do that anymore. Yeah. So the courts say what the law is, and that gives us a chance to go make those arguments to a judge and have the judge carry out his job or her job to interpret the statute, and then we can take it up the chain from there and eventually maybe end up in the United States Supreme Court if that's where we go. But it takes a lot of discretion and power away from agencies, which this administration has really, really used to its advantage more than any administration that I've ever seen.
Yeah, no doubt.
General Morrissey, did you have something you wanted to add?
Absolutely. So one of the big goals of the Republican attorneys general over the past 12 years, I've been AG since 2013, has been to wipe out Chevron deference. And I think the reason, thank you, The reason why so many attorneys general have been focused on this is because this is, at its core, one of the most important parts of our constitutional structure. When you think about how a bill becomes a law and then what happens thereafter, you're usually not thinking about things where an agency bureaucrat acts without any power just because the matter is complicated. This was one of the most absurd decisions out of the Supreme Court we had in a long time. And so the goal has always been that if you're going to legislate on a particular matter, my goodness, Congress, being the body with legislative representatives across the country, should act. And if the agency obtains power, it should be clearly articulated to the agency what that power is all about. So I think what you're seeing with Chevron deference, and when you saw with the major questions doctrine, our big West Virginia v. EPA case, is that the courts are looking much more so as to whether that power was delegated to the agency. And if it does, hey, that's great. That's consistent more with how the founders envisioned separation of powers. But it also means that the little guy gets an opportunity to play, and it's not a one-sided affair, because an individual plaintiff can go into court, and if he has a meritorious case, he gets to proceed and go as far as he wants, and it should be done on the basis of fairness, reading the statute, not just because you're on the government, tie goes to the government. That's not the way it should work. That's not the way it's going to be anymore.
Let's talk about censorship. Murthy versus Biden, I believe, was sent back down to a lower court by the Supreme Court. And so, let's talk about that case a little bit. The federal government wanted social media to be censored during COVID. There were all kinds of things they didn't want us to see or share. What does that case mean to America, really, Missouri and then America?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say I'm so proud to partner with my colleague from Louisiana, Liz Murrill, on that case. And you know, what an honor it was to sit with her at counsel table at the United States Supreme Court back in March as that case was argued. And the fight for the First Amendment goes on. We are far from over in that case. We did preliminary discovery to get a preliminary injunction. And what we uncovered was a relationship of coercion and collusion from the White House across a spectrum of bureaucratic agencies, targeting conservative voices for censorship, your voices. The government doesn't want you involved in public discourse because you're on the right side of the issues. And Biden can't win the argument on the merits, so he's got to silence you. And how does he do that? He boots you off social media. He de-emphasizes, de-platforms, shadow bans you. And let me say this, the type of censorship that's going on today is much more pernicious and nefarious than ever before in human history. When King George shut down a printing press, everyone knew, and it was just words that were taken away. But what's going on today is done in shadowy corridors of big tech, at the government's demand, and you may never know you were shadow banned, de-emphasized, or deplatformed. And your First Amendment right to speak was violated, but our First Amendment right to hear from you was violated as well. And it's not just words anymore, it's images, it's body language. And so, within the context of history, this is a case of enormous magnitude. Preliminary discovery, got a preliminary injunction. What the Supreme Court said was that the government absolutely coerced big tech social media into silencing American voices in violation of the First Amendment, but we need more evidence to prove that that censorship extended beyond the year 2021. Guess what? We're going back to the trial court. We're going to find it. We're going to continue to root out the vast censorship enterprise so you have a free, fair, and open marketplace of ideas.
Yeah. And as someone who's been in an industry that's been censored and at a site that's been censored, you changed the mindset just by bringing that lawsuit. All of a sudden, Twitter and other places were much more hesitant to go do things. Just jumping in made a difference. It's really a remarkable case when you look at it, because the impact before the courts ruled was social media had a light on them, and what Mike Benz has done at the Foundation for Freedom Online and others, we're now learning it, and we're making them ashamed to do it. And I have to really applaud your state for taking that lead and your state for taking that lead.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I would kind of give a shout out to Elon Musk, who changed the conversation a little bit.
He did a little bit, yes.
You know, because he pushed a lot of material out.
And he did. He gave us that transparency.
And he changed the way that Twitter and now X was operating and cooperating in an investigation. Congress got involved on the House side with some investigations, which also pushed out more information. Yeah. I mean, it's very disturbing what was happening, and the how rapid these big tech platforms complied with the pressure that the government was putting on them, and I think the opinions that we defended, that we won these injunctions. They were very detailed and well written. They explained this government-wide operation. It was larger than anything we had ever seen. It's terrifying. That CISA and the FBI and that all of these organizations that have so much power were involved in pressuring and taking down protected speech that they knew was protected speech, that they acknowledged was protected speech, and that it affected public health because they didn't want anybody to be contributing to vaccine hesitancy when it came to COVID. Well, my youngest son had myocarditis as a result of the Pfizer vaccine. So it had a very personal connection for me to say, you are intentionally withholding information, affecting what we call, science and investigation and a fair evaluation of the efficacy of these vaccines. And then it went on to involve the Hunter Biden laptop, which obviously affected our elections. It was so pervasive, and it is a huge threat to the Republic. I mean, it is one of the most important cases, and because it's a different type of communication that's been established since, we haven't had a First Amendment fight like this before, and we haven't had the government putting that kind of coercion on corporate entities like they were, I think, in the past, with the same kind of consequences. So we're going to continue to have that fight. There were a couple of other decisions that came out of the Supreme Court that I think did press the issue of coercion, and coercion's not okay. I'm not sure why it was not okay in those cases, but it was okay in ours. I don't think you can really square that, but we will keep fighting it, and I think the fact that we brought the fight, that we persisted with the fight, that Judge Doty, one of Louisiana federal court judge, allowed us to conduct early discovery, and that was huge for us in that case. I mean, all of those things made a difference, and then other people kind of coming in and helping move the ball made a difference. And so now at least it's out in the open a lot more than it was before.
We touched on education a little bit, and we've talked a little bit about how attorneys general are working together across the United States. One of the interesting things about Moms for Liberty has been that what's happening in one place isn't just happening in that one place, right? It's happening in all of your states. And as you continue to look at ways to find solutions to push back, one of the areas that we are concerned about is age appropriateness. America used to understand, we used to all agree that there were some things that were appropriate for kids, and there were some things that were appropriate for adults, much like we used to know what a woman and a man was, right? 2 sexes, 0 genders, infinite personalities. So the books in the libraries, I would be remiss if I did not bring up, as a final question, the content, the books in the libraries. A book that if I showed a child on a playground, I would be arrested, but can be put in a school and can be shown to a child in the school. And it just seems like such a double standard. And so how has this issue come up in your state, and how are you working to put some guardrails around it?
That is an issue that has really struck a nerve. Certainly in our state, it struck a nerve. And when I was Solicitor General and Jeff Landry, who's now the governor, was Attorney General, we worked on a guide for school board, for communities, basically, governing bodies that had some authority over library boards and for the library boards themselves, and kind of started this discussion about what can you do, how can you engage. I reacted pretty viscerally to this idea at the very beginning. I thought it was fundamentally ridiculous to say that we don't have any ability to remove a book from the collection if it's a content-based decision. Guys, we've been doing that for decades. I mean, the library, and you can buy stuff on Amazon.com, which you couldn't do in the past before. So libraries used to be brick and mortar with a pretty limited space on the bookshelves. So we move content in and out. They are constantly changing the collection. It wasn't until this fight began where we saw these books and this movement that was coming through the Library Association that we started to this discussion about can you or can't you remove books from the library, and I was like, of course you can. Well, it turns out there's a Supreme Court case from a while back that says it's a plurality. It's not really, I'm not sure that it's going to survive a new challenge, and I'm happy to bring that case up to the Supreme Court, because I think that it's absurd to say that we have no authority to curate the collection when we have no legal obligation to make it available to begin with.
Correct. Very true. And unfortunately, many schools do not have libraries or librarians or access. So we're not talking a lot about what the kids should be reading, right? Instead of a lot of this nonsense. Gentlemen?
Look, I think to build on that, all of us have grown up in environments where there are age-appropriate standards for different activities. So if you want to go have a drink of alcohol, there's a particular date that you have to reach. If you want to smoke a cigarette, there's a particular age that you have to reach. I remember growing up that you would have to get permission from your parent if you were going to take aspirin in the schools. Anyone remember that? Yeah. But if you're a little bit older, you remember those facts. So we have to step back a little bit and know that there are appropriate standards to put in place, and most certainly even inclusive of contact. And that has been going on for the longest of times. And you're right, these cases go back decades and decades. So we have to step back and remember there's a long history, because ultimately there's a lot of public money that goes into these libraries, public money that goes into the educational systems as well. And a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old does not operate the same way as an 18-year-old or a 25-year-old. And that's some of the argument that I make when it comes to different issues, not only with respect to the libraries, but a lot of the gender transition and other issues, that 3- and 5-year-olds are not capable of making the same decisions as an adult, and we should not be afraid to say that.
Amen.
And by the way, they do say that in criminal context, right? I mean, we've had this battleground over accountability in the juvenile justice system, and the whole push was their brains aren't wired the same way. It takes time to get to kind of the same decision-making capacity of an adult, and it really doesn't happen until you're 27. I mean, all of that fight has continued in the criminal courts, and yet when it comes now to our schools and to health, decisions, they're saying that we're going to let children who are 10 years old or 3 years old or 4 years old be making decisions that will change them forever.
Yeah. When it's a parental rights issue again, making sure that the materials that your children are exposed to are consistent with your values as parents. I have a right as a parent to have certain conversations with my kids at different points in their maturity. And that's not up to the school. That's up to the parents. And that's codified in Missouri law. It's section 170.015. It governs how human sexuality is allowed and is not allowed to be taught in schools. And it governs what kind of curriculum is permissible in libraries and schools. And there's a parental opt-in or opt-out procedure. And now the left wants to groom children. They want to sexualize children. And they're going to do it in the name of diversity. And as conservatives who support not only traditional values, but also parental rights, we have to have the courage and the bravery to stand up and say, it is not an exercise in diversity to expose our children to age-inappropriate sexual content. And to stand up and say no, and it starts with empowering yourselves at the school boards and using lawsuits and cease and desist letters from the AG's office.
You see it's
an attack on faith, too, by the way. I mean, it's, they sterilize those words from it. But at the end of the day, these fights are, when they're coming after your control over your children to decide what they can see and hear and when it's appropriate for them to be exposed to certain information, they are putting some fundamental conflicts in place between us and a lot of our faith traditions. So I think that's part of this, and we shouldn't lose sight of that attack, too.
Jenna Merrill, when I was coming up here, someone texted me, they wanted to know where you got those boots. I feel really inadequate with these black shoes.
I got them in Baton Rouge.
You come in style. How about that? As I was prepping last night, one of my wise colleagues said to me that the attorneys generals have been the last line of defense for the Constitution these last several years as our government has reached further and further towards liberty. You are 3 great shining examples of what that really means to be the last line of defense. General Bailey, all of us, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Good job. Hey, good job.
Thank you, Madison.
going to do myself. So, all right.
Thank you for coming. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Up next is a little trailer for a movie that is premiering tomorrow, and it's called Trump's Rescue Mission. And I don't think there are any words to describe it. I think we should just watch.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him
When Joe Biden came into office, he inherited success. All Biden had to do was do nothing, just not screw it up.
We went from safe streets to record crime.
Are you for defunding the police?
How are you defining defund the police?
We went from $2 gas to $4 gas.
We are in the longest sustained period of a wrong track number that high in the history of our poll.
We went from stable prices to record inflation.
Over $1.3 billion.
You can't put two sentences together.
After I signed the PAC Act, Ketanji drowned Jackson. Putin's kleptocracy. Yeah.
He can't find the stairs off a stage when he makes a speech.
We have Joe Biden with an open border, a red carpet invitation. If you're a terrorist, come murder Americans here today.
Joe Biden came into office and unsecured the border on purpose.
I want a number. How many people have you let into this country?
You don't know. Does anybody know? None of you know.
We're in the middle of a war in this country. It is a war between those of us who love the United States of America and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for.
Is the United States safer from foreign terror threats today than when Joe Biden took office?
If you took the 10 worst presidents and added them up, they would not have done the damage to this country as Joe Biden has done.
Trump handed him an economy on a silver platter.
Raise your hand if you think President Trump's policies on the economy would be better for your family. All right, so that is everybody.
2, 10, 12, 15. Whoop, stepping on it's black. Anyway.
Joe Biden, I don't believe he knows what he's doing. I really don't.
The chaotic and deadly U.S. evacuation from Afghanistan stunned Americans and the world.
My teenage daughter would have planned a better exit than Joe Biden did.
When Putin saw how incompetent we were, he said, wow, I'm now going to go into Ukraine.
This is what Russian President Vladimir Putin unleashed on Ukraine.
What has Joe Biden done? Allowed 2 wars to start on his watch, in the Ukraine and the one in Israel.
It is one of the darkest moments of the Biden presidency to date.
It's almost like they intentionally tried to set the Middle East on fire.
Hamas terrorists went door to door, slaughtering anyone they could find.
We're going to end up in World War III because of this guy. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Who are you going to vote for?
Trump.
And why?
I'll let you guess.
I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to save our country and to save our Constitution.
He's doing this for one reason and one reason alone, because we are on a rescue mission.
Trump's rescue mission, saving America.
It's like we drafted a quarterback.
$159 billion.
And then you realize after 2 games he can't play?
Please welcome to the stage Ed Corrigan, Conservative Partnership Institute.
I got to see that movie. That looks pretty exciting. So my name is Ed Corrigan. I'm the president of Conservative Partnership Institute in Washington, D.C. And I've been in politics about 30 years now, doing different things in Washington, D.C., and every cycle is the same thing. We say, oh, we're going to elect the right people. And then, yay, we won. And then they disappoint us. And then the next cycle, we do the same thing over and over again. Every time we go out on the campaign trail, all of these candidates, they sound like Ron Johnson. They sound like Byron Donalds. They sound like Harriet Hageman, Ron DeSantis, Sarah Sanders. They all sound great. And we're like, oh, this is so exciting. And then they disappoint us. Why does this happen? It's because there is a well-oiled machine, particularly in Washington, D.C. Once they arrive, the machine accepts them with welcome arms and says, hey, just join us. It's okay. All you got to do is be a part of the swamp, and good things will happen to you. And then they start to go wobbly, and that's when they disappoint us. What we see, Moms for Liberty is doing this at the local level, trying to make sure that our school board members and our activists are armed to do battle against the forces that we're all up against. In D.C., we started in 2017, right after President Trump was elected, we started a group called Conservative Partnership Institute. Our job is to be the counterweight to that. What we want to do is make it so that when people are in D.C. fighting for the good causes that we all believe in, that they're rewarded for that, that they're not made to be ostracized and have a difficult time. They don't get invited to lunch. They don't get, and nobody sits with them. We want them to have a rewarding and basically a career that we can all be proud of. And so I wanted to ask each of you something that's a part of this, which is all of you, many of you, you're in this fight because you believe in it. If things go the way it looks like they're going, we're going to get an extraordinary opportunity starting in January to really change this country. But we're going to need people to do this, okay? We're going to need thousands of people out of nowhere. The conservative movement in D.C. does not have the machinery to do this job. We need more. We need more people who are willing to say, you know what? I've had a good career, or I'm doing well in my business. I live in wherever in America, or I have a kid who's in college and is maybe ready to do something to fight for the cause. Come to D.C. I know it's the swamp. I know none of you really love D.C. D.C. needs you. And so think about who you know, whether it's yourself, whether it's your friends or family members who might be willing to take up, move into D.C. and do some good work for our country, whether it's in the administration, whether it's Capitol Hill, or elsewhere in the conservative movement. The Conservative Partnership wants to help you do that. Go to our website, cpi.org. And we'd like to basically talk to you about possibly what that could look like. But again, thank you so much for all being here. We're really excited about the great work that Moms for Liberty is doing. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of an assignment today. Let's get in the game. Thank you so much.
Please welcome to the stage Tiffany Justice and Heritage Foundation President, Dr. Kevin Roberts.
We're so excited to be joined today by two amazing leaders, Governor Ron DeSantis and Governor Sarah Sanders of Florida and Arkansas. Let's give them a round of applause. Governor DeSantis is a former prosecutor and U.S. congressman, and with a new bold vision for Florida, he was elected the 46th governor of Florida in 2018, and he was reelected by a 20-point margin in 2022. Governor DeSantis is my governor. We love him in the state of Florida, and he has stood up for freedom even when it wasn't very popular. So thank you for that, Governor DeSantis. Sarah Sanders is the first woman to serve as governor of Arkansas. Prior to serving as governor, she gained a bevy of political experience working on several congressional and presidential campaigns. And we can all remember when she served as the White House press secretary for President Trump from 2017 to 2019. You both have 3 children, moms and dads, and you are showing a bold new vision for America. Governor DeSantis, you set out a blueprint for America, showing in Florida what we had done as far as safeguarding parental rights and moving our economy forward. We'll focus on parental rights to start if we could. Let's talk a little bit about some of the work you've done in Florida to safeguard parental rights.
Sure. I mean, I think that it used to be you would send your kid to school and They would learn math and science and stuff, and maybe not everything was perfect, but you didn't have to worry about your kid going to kindergarten and being told that they should change their gender. You didn't have to worry about some of the things that now we start to see in our society. And so we put the kibosh on that in Florida. We said we are not going to be indulging in things like gender ideology in our schools. And you'd think that that would be something that would be pretty common sense. I know with parents it was common sense. It was not something that the media wanted to hear, and it was also not something that our most powerful and well-known company, Disney, wanted to hear. So we ended up having a standoff over that. And, you know, I'm just sick over the years. So many Republicans, anytime some big bad corporation opposes what they want to do, they like cower in the corner like little scared kitties. And so we said no. You know, we are going to lead the state of Florida. We're not going to subcontract out leadership to a woke corporation based in Burbank, California. And so we won that battle with the Parents' Rights Bill. We won. We also won the battle of eliminating all the corporate welfare that they had. And the result is now they want to build all these new parks, and they're going to end up paying us a lot more money than they would have before. So it was a win across the board, but it was the right thing to do for parents. We've also done universal school choice in Florida. So money follows the student. You go where you want to go. And it's good for students, good for parents, but it also creates competition amongst schools. You open a charter school, you're entitled to no students. You got to get, some parents got to say, I'm sending my kid to charter. You open a private school, some parents have to say, I want to send my kids there. So people know that this money is available, and we now have, between private, charter, and district choice programs, we got over 1.5 million students in school choice in the state of Florida actively that are doing it. And then we eliminated CRT. We've done all that. We've done a big emphasis on American civics now in the state of Florida. But I think one thing that kind of gets lost in this, because we think parents are like, okay, kids that are in the home, which is important. My wife and I have very young kids, 7, 6, and 4, so all that is very sensitive to us. But we also recognize that, wait a minute, maybe you get the K-12 schools right. Maybe you are able to do a great job as a parent. But if you send your kid to a university at age 18 and the university undoes everything you've worked hard for 18 years, then what good does that do? So we've taken on higher ed in Florida, and the first state to do it. We were the first state to eliminate DEI in our university system. It's really discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and it's wrong. We also have all tenured professors now undergo review every 5 years and can be terminated for poor performance. So you have professors that are not meeting the mission, and the mission of these universities is a classical mission of education: search for truth, prepare people to be citizens of this republic. It is not about indoctrination. It's not about political ideology. And so there have been some professors that have gone out their merry way. And, you know, the media will sometimes be like, oh, there's a brain drain. Professors are leaving Florida. Wait a minute. If Marxist professors are leaving Florida, that is not a bad thing for Florida. That's a good thing. So on higher ed, and we've got more that we're going to do. You know, we are going to have. We're ranked #1 public education, higher education nationwide 6 years in a row. But we are going to be known for providing a classic university experience, as our founders would have understood it. When the Hamas started going to campus after October 7th, you didn't see them overrun any of our Florida universities for a simple reason. If one of our universities would have turned into Columbia, the president of that university would have been out of a job the next day. That's just the way it's going to be. We had one of our trustees at New College in Sarasota was being harassed by some of these Marxist students, and so the university kicked him out. We had other students that were screaming and interrupting a graduation ceremony, so the university is withholding their diplomas until they apologize to the speaker to their classroom. So we're not letting the inmates run the asylum. We're not going to use your tax dollars to create a university system that is dedicated to indoctrination and political activism. So we're doing it right. We're happy to do it. Everything we do, we get blowback from the left and from the media, but that just tells me that we're over the target.
That's right.
Thanks, Governor DeSantis. You know, as I'd sit here, I'm reminded by your record of service as governor, Governor Sanders, your record of service as governor, that so much hope exists outside Washington in the states. God bless the two of you and your administrations and your state legislatures for what you've done. As a Southerner, you know, I'm a Texan. It's nice to see. Yeah, you'll forgive that, especially in football season. It's nice to see red state governors, period, but in the South really be laboratories of democracy, as the two of you know well. But Governor Sanders, to the point, one of the things that I think we're realizing, especially over the last few days, including among Americans who may not call themselves "quote unquote" conservative, is that we just want to return to normal. We just want to return to common sense. I mean, that's driven Governor DeSantis' agenda, yours as governor. In your expertise as a communicator, now as governor and a policy leader, leaning on some of the successes you've already had in your tenure as governor, what are you hearing out in Arkansas and around the country that are lessons for everyone here online about how to talk about bringing this country back to common sense, whether that be on education or something related?
Thank you so much, and it is such an honor to be here and certainly to share the stage with one of my fellow conservative governors, and thank you both for having us and all of Moms for Liberty for not just having this event, but more importantly, the work that you do every single day back in your home states. Some of the most ardent conservative leaders that we have and grassroots activists anywhere in the country, and so thank you for your tireless efforts and the work that you do. You know, Governor DeSantis has a little bit of a longer record of success, but I'm hoping to give him a good run for his money. I'm a year and a half in, and we have been able to do some incredible things in Arkansas. And, you know, one of the biggest things that we have found is that people, frankly, want government to leave them alone. They want government out of their schools, out of their homes, out of their business, out of their community, dictating every single action that they take. And that's exactly what Republican governors are doing. Because we have such an absolute failure in Washington and the leadership there is so broken, it's frankly fallen on Republican governors to step up and start leading the way. And I think that's exactly what you've seen happen over the course of the last several years. You know, I'm lucky enough and blessed enough that I have a dad, speaking of parents, that was one of, I'll pause for applause for my dad. If anybody knows him, if you could report back that I stopped to let him get applause, I would really appreciate that. But I have one of the most remarkable, strong communicators that we've ever seen in the conservative movement for a father, which is difficult because it sets the bar very high, but it also provides a great roadmap on what we need to do and how we can lead our states. And my entire life, I got to hear my dad tell me that being a governor was the greatest job on the face of the planet. And I got to watch him serve the state of Arkansas for almost 11 years in that role. And shortly after I was elected, I'd had a little bit of a rough week, and I called my dad looking for a little bit of advice, and I said, "Hey, Dad, you remember how you told me being a governor is the best job in the world?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "When does that happen?" And in a way that only a dad can, he was very candid, very direct. He said, "Sarah, you haven't done anything yet." He said, "Once you do something, you will get to experience why it's the greatest job in the world." And since then, I've had my first legislative session. We were able to pass the most comprehensive, transformative education package, certainly in my state's history, probably anywhere in the country. And now, every single day, every time I'm out at one of my kids' baseball games, a grocery store visit, something, just an ordinary moment, I get to talk with people whose lives are changed because of the work that we're doing. And that's when I got to find out why being a governor is the best job in the world. Because we're not living the dysfunction of Washington. We're actually not just talking about conservative policy, but we're passing it and implementing it and now seeing the fruit of it in our states every single day. I'm proud of what we've been able to do, taking Arkansas from being 48th in the country for teacher pay to top 5 overnight, passing universal school choice so that every student, every family in the state of Arkansas can go to the place where their child can best learn and best be educated. And that's exactly the type of thing that we've seen people like Governor DeSantis do in Florida. I was smart enough to steal his number 2 at education and bring them to Arkansas. I'm sorry about that. Okay. So that we can continue to lead the way, and we will do that as conservative governors. It's one of the great things, too, is there is a great sense of camaraderie and ability, to your point, to have a laboratory of democracy in our states. And we're going to continue leading the way. And thankfully, in November, we will have somebody in Washington that will help us clear that path on the federal government, because we're going to take back the White House, we're going to take the Senate, and we're going to take the House. And you're going to see Republican victories everywhere.
So we've talked about some of the wonderful things that you guys are doing. Let's talk about some of the other things that are happening around the country that aren't so great. I have a good friend who lives in California. She always says to me, Tiffany, California isn't Vegas. What happens here doesn't stay here. We've learned that now, right? Some of the worst policies hurting families and children are coming out of California. Governor Gavin, if his lips are moving, he's lying, Newsom, just signed into law AB 1955, which says that school districts cannot tell parents if their children are struggling with gender confusion while at school. Governor DeSantis, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts as Governor Newsom signed that horrendous bill into law?
Well, honestly, I wasn't surprised. I assumed they had already done that. I mean, I did this debate with him last fall, and he was trying to say that California respects parents' rights. And I said, well, that's interesting, because you have a policy where minor children from other states are allowed to travel to California behind their parents' back and get gender transition hormones and surgery. How the heck is that respecting those parents' rights? So this is something that is, I think, par for the course there. And why are they doing this? Because they view ultimately the state and the state-imposed ideology to be supreme. And so if you as a parent want to raise your kids in a way that departs from that state-mandated ideology, they're going to claw back your rights and your privileges to do so. So this is what the left wants to do. Whatever's happening there is likely going to happen in other states. Now, we do the opposite in Florida. We don't allow schools, to do that. That's just inappropriate. Are we doing so well in reading and math and science? Are these schools performing so well that they can dabble into doing all these? No, it's not appropriate to be doing. It takes away rights of parents, and so we don't stand for it in Florida. But this is the future if we don't get this right. So I know a lot of the states, we fought back against it, but in a lot of these blue states, this is going to become the norm. We also in Florida, we prohibited the gender surgeries for minors. There's people getting rich off this they're lining their pockets. Some parents, I think, may be, really nuts on some of this, but I think a lot of the parents are confused, and these doctors are pushing this stuff on the parents, telling the parents they have to do this, and so a lot of it's under duress. So we stopped that. We had a liberal judge strike that down. We'll win on appeal. This is what we do in Florida. We pass policy. The left finds a liberal judge. They sue. We lose, then that, and then we win on appeal. So that's what will end up happening here. And ultimately, I think the Supreme Court is going to have to take the case on all these different issues, because it's going to continue to be a flashpoint in our society. We got it right in Florida, but not every state is getting it right.
follow up to that, Governor Sanders, what's your approach to that question been in Arkansas? And relatedly, if you don't mind, what's the proper role of the federal government in a way that properly, legally, constitutionally would support the great efforts in places like Arkansas and Florida?
Well, we certainly believe in states' rights and the ability for states to make decisions. You know, as a parent, I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 9-year-old. My kids can't decide what they want for breakfast, much less what type of life-altering decision that they could make. And the idea that we would allow medical professionals, if you can call them that, if they're willing to engage in that type of behavior, to do that to children is not only disgraceful, but it should be against the law. And that's why you're seeing states step up, pass laws like that. And I think the federal government has to take a bigger role. And I certainly think with the new president in the White House, we're going to see that. But we cannot allow the type of activity that's taking place. Democrats, I say it all the time, they love to talk about the war on women. And I repeatedly have said the only war in this country on women is on conservative women from the far left.
That's right.
There is no greater attack on women than we are seeing waged from the far left. The question I ask all the time, where are the feminists? Why are they not stepping up and pushing back against a party that can't even tell you what a woman is, much less try to talk about being the one to empower it? As one of the idea that we're going to allow Joe Biden to make these type of decisions is something that we simply cannot sit back and allow to happen. I think it's one of the places and one of the reasons that you're seeing Donald Trump's numbers skyrocket over the last several months is people are sick and tired of the type of activity that's taking place at the hands of this administration. And so states certainly have a role to play, but I also think the federal government needs to step up. In Arkansas, when the Biden administration pushed out what they thought were going to be kind of the new dictatorship on Title IX, we announced that Arkansas simply would not comply, and that we will not allow the federal government to come in and tell us that they can take over women's sports, that they can take away women's opportunities and scholarships, and if they want to sue us, so be it. But we are going to be on the front lines fighting back and protecting women in our state and helping lead the fight across the country.
Another issue that we're grappling with right now as parents, as Americans, is technology and social media. Sarah, I learned recently that you sent a copy of The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt to every U.S. governor and every Arkansas legislator. What brought you to do that?
Well, like I said, I have 3 kids, and with a 12-year-old daughter, one of the biggest fights we have at our house right now is over social media and cell phone use. And there's not a single data point that you look at that will tell you it is a good thing for kids to have total and constant access to smartphones and social media. In fact, it's the total opposite. Every single study you see will tell you that suicide, depression, anxiety are skyrocketing in our country right now. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to continue to see the decline of the youth in America. This is, I think, one of the places that we have to engage probably almost as much as anywhere else right now. The level of access that students have to drugs, to bullying, so many other things that we're putting that directly into their hands. As a parent, I want to see us engage. We've taken in Arkansas not a top-down, heavy-handed approach, but we opened up a grant program allowing school districts to opt in, and the state will fund having pouches or lockers in the school and access to telehealth, mental health specialists. And the response has been overwhelming. Nearly 75% of schools within the first 2 weeks that were offered voluntary participation have opted into the program, because our administrators, our parents, our teachers are seeing how detrimental social media and smartphones are to our students. And this is one of the places that I think we have to engage, and certainly something we're going to lead on in Arkansas.
So Governor DeSantis, thank you for that. This is such an interesting issue. We had a bill in Florida that you actually vetoed that said that kids who were 14 and 15 wouldn't be able to access social media. But there was a big push on parents, from parents saying, okay, but what about parental authorization? There was no parental authorization piece. And we know that there have been cases that have been brought against laws similar to this in other places that even did have parental authorization that have been struck down because of First Amendment issues. And so this is such a big issue, and I think we're really trying to work together to find ways to address it, but also respect the freedom and liberty of Americans. So how have you thought about this issue, and how will you continue on? And then we ended up passing a law that did protect children. So let's just talk about you as a dad, social media, you know, what you expect for your kids, and how you think we can help other parents to lead here.
Well, first, just with schools, you know, this was like a year or two ago, I said, you know, they shouldn't have cell phones in the classroom. Just put them on the side. Why are we sitting there with everyone on their phone? What's the purpose? Is it just a daycare? And so we said that was part of a teacher's Bill of Rights because we want to attract good teachers. Obviously, we don't want teacher unions imposing their political agenda, but we want young people to want to join the profession. We raise pay, we provide incentives. But, you know, a lot of teachers are like, the classrooms aren't safe because if something happens and they ensure discipline, then they may get sued. And then the attentiveness was like a huge issue. So we did. And I think when we said that, like, I think someone in the media compared me to Hitler for not wanting cell phones and that. It was ridiculous, the outcry. Well, now it turns out even these blue school districts are saying how much better it is that the kids aren't on their phones all day. And they don't need to be on their phones all day in the classroom. I mean, we didn't even have phones like that for most of American history, and we were able to get fined. So that's it. Now, states like California are even having to do it, and other states are doing it. So that was smart. Now, the broader use of social media, even apart from that, what we did was try to say, okay, right now, social media companies under federal law are actually not allowed to issue an account to people that are under 14. Now, those companies do it. They don't verify. Federal government doesn't really do anything. So we said, you know, 14 and under, that's similar to what federal law is. You can't issue a social media account to someone that's 14 or under. It just can't do it. There's other things you can't do for people that are young. 14 and 15, or 15 and 16, parental consent. If a parent wants to authorize you to have an account, they can do it above that, then they can do it. And look, if a parent has a 12-year-old and they want to lend the 12-year-old their own social media account, we're not going to police that. We're policing the companies because I think the companies are the problem. And what the companies have done is they have technology that's addictive. I think it's terrible for kids to be buried in these phones all day. They should be outside. They should be doing other things. So that's going into effect this year. Obviously, it's going to be litigated. But, you know, we did the social media. We were the first state to do protections against social media censorship for individuals because they can kick you off social media because you're conservative. They wouldn't do that if you're liberal. So we just tried to provide protections. It got struck down in the lower courts. It went to the Supreme Court. They sent it back because they said the courts made mistakes. So we'll see what happens there. But these things are going to get litigated. It's very hard. But here's the deal. Is social media a net positive for children? No. Social media is clearly a net negative. And I'm not going to say that's 100% negative because there are good things you can do, sharing moments and things like that, sending videos that are in good, there's positive that can come of it. But the negative far outweighs it. And so I think what we're trying to do is really help parents navigate this. And so I think it'll be easy for a parent now, if a 12-year-old's like, I want Facebook or I want this, they can say, no, they're not allowed to issue you an account, you know, don't. And then if they get a little older and the parent wants to do it, they can make that judgment about whether they want to or not. But social media has been very, very harmful to our youth. It's intentional. These companies are profiting from it, and our country is suffering because of it.
So Tiffany and I have saved the sort of broadest question for last, but it's about vision, and it's coming to you, Governor Sanders, just as a heads up. And it is based on this premise. Americans have every reason to wake up and be discouraged, even though we know that they shouldn't, right? We ought to have eternal hope. We have a lot more reasons in the last days to know that someone more powerful than us is in charge. But I encourage conservatives and Americans around the country not to focus on the worst case scenario in terms of policy and politics, but on the best case scenario. Moms for Liberty, I think, is the great, great entity promoting that. Cast a vision for us for America 10 years from now. What does America look like based on what you have done in Arkansas, Governor DeSantis has done in Florida, what Moms for Liberty, all these people who are part of this movement have done? Give us some encouragement about why what they are doing is connected to that vision.
I think the really simple answer is that even on our difficult days and when you turn on the news, it can be very easy to get discouraged. But ultimately, and at the end of the day, I think the thing that we have to remember and hang on to is no matter what, America is still the greatest country that the world has ever known. And there is great confidence and hope in that. You know, one of the most powerful moments during my 2.5 years at the White House was getting to travel with the president, and I had the opportunity to go to nearly 24 different countries. And on those, every experience is a little bit different, but certainly one of the most memorable moments, not just of that time, but probably my entire life, was on a trip that I had the opportunity to travel with him. And I know you've heard this story, to Iraq at Christmas. And it was literally Christmas Day, and I had just finished up the chaotic day of Christmas with my 3 kids, cleaning up wrapping paper that had been shoved into every corner of our house, when I had to leave our home, unable to tell my own kids where I was going, because the place that we were headed that night was so dangerous. They didn't want anybody in the world to know that the President of the United States would be touching down and spending his Christmas there. And as we took off on Air Force One, we did so in complete and total darkness. They turned the lights off the plane, the lights off the runway, and 12 hours later, we touched down in the war-torn part of western Iraq. And when we did, once again, it was in total darkness, except for a dining hall that had a little bit of light coming from it. And the reason you could see light as we touched down from that dining hall was because hundreds of troops had packed into this little compact space, thinking in that moment that they were going to have dinner with senior military leadership that had gathered to celebrate the Christmas holiday. They had absolutely no idea that the President and First Lady were about to walk into that dining hall. And when they did, I got to witness, frankly, a sight and a scene and a sound that I know I will never forget. Each of these troops coming from literally all different parts of the country, all political backgrounds, every race, every demographic you can imagine, packed into this one room. But in that moment when the President of the United States stepped in, they shouted and chanted in perfect unison over and over and over again, USA, USA, USA. It was honestly this perfect picture of what America is all about. You have people who are willing to put everything on the line, who are willing to serve, who are willing to sacrifice, and in some cases make the ultimate sacrifice so that each of us get to live free in the greatest country on the face of the planet. I mean, we can never lose sight of that. We have people literally willing to die to protect the freedoms that you and I so easily get to enjoy. And even on America's worst day, which we don't have that many of when you really look at it, we are still a country that loves freedom, that protects freedom, and has people that are willing to die so that we can pass it on to the next generation. That is a powerful thing. And in 10 years from now, in 20 years, 30, 40, 50, I don't think that America will have lost sight of what makes us so incredibly great and special. And it is that we are a country that will do anything to protect that freedom and pass it on to the next generation. The reason I know that is because I'm sitting in a room of people that I know that are completely dedicated to seeing that happen. And I get to interact with those people every single day in the state of Arkansas and all across this country. People who understand what makes America unique and will never let us lose sight of it. So thank you for the work that you do in helping in that.
bold vision for the future of America. We're so incredibly grateful that you joined us today. And thank you to Dr. Kevin Roberts and Heritage for being such great leaders and always supporting Moms for Liberty.
Y'all are the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin. To help close us out today, Vivek Ramaswamy has joined us. A little surprise. So I actually had the honor of going out to host a town hall for Vivek in New Hampshire. It was one of my first times in New Hampshire, and he was running for president. And to see a young man who has a wife and 2 young kids out on the campaign trail willing to serve our country was inspiring. And Vivek will share a few words, and then we'll close out. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see my Moms for Liberty here. Love it. It's great to be here. I remember that convention in Philadelphia, and it was so special to our family. We will remember that for the rest of our lives. The presidential campaign, the one thing that was hard about it was in the first phase of it, so I'd stepped down from my business career, and I didn't know what this political run was going to be like. My wife, Apurva, who some of you know is a throat surgeon, successful career in her own right. We're raising our 2 boys. We thought I would be campaigning on the road maybe 3-4 days a week, do the rest from home. A month in, we realized it wasn't going to work out that way. We had to be all in on this together as a family, doing every stage of it, the 4 of us. And that convention in Philadelphia was actually the turning point. It was the first time we brought our 2 kids on stage with us, and you all were so welcoming to them and patient that I will just tell you that moment will stay with us for the rest of our lives. And I'm so grateful for every mom and every dad and every parent who cares about actually passing that American dream on to our kids. I'm not going to peddle fake optimism. The American dream is not alive and well right now. It is alive and hanging on for life support. It's not morning in America right now. But I believe it can be, actually. What happened last Saturday night could have been a national tragedy of historic proportion. Could have been a tragedy for the history of the world in a scale we haven't seen in this country. But I believe we were given another chance to take a step back and ask ourselves who we really are, not as Republicans, but as Americans. And the way I think we're going to be successful, not just in winning this election, but in reviving this country, is less, actually, by focusing on the other side. I know we've talked a lot about it today. You all have talked about it. I've been focused on it. Making sure that we protect ourselves against the left-wing woke indoctrination and poison that's infesting the minds of our children. And that is important and necessary work as a first step. But where do we go from here is the other side has the plot missed. We have to ask ourselves who we are and what we actually stand for. See, the other side will feed our kids race, gender, sexuality, and climate. And we got to stand up against that. But we have to offer an alternative of what we actually want them to know, to grow up in and value the individual, family, nation, and God. Beats race, gender, sexuality, and climate if we have the courage to actually stand for our own vision, answer what it means to be an American in the year 2024. What are the actual values that bind us together? We've been so taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences that we forgot all of the ways that we are actually the same as Americans. Without that, our diversity is actually meaningless. Think about it. What are we? Without that common thread that binds us together, we're really a bunch of different looking 2-legged higher mammals with a bunch of different shades of melanin, walk in some geographic space that we call a country, doing what our iPhones tell us to do on a given day. That's the America I see at times. Young people in my generation, certainly my 2 sons' generation, are lost, hungry for direction, suffering from depression, anxiety, fentanyl overdoses, wokeism, transgenderism. These are all part of the same symptoms of that deeper void. And I think our moment now is to step up and fill that void with the real thing. Answer what it means to be a citizen of this country in the year 2024. It means we believe in merit. And we teach that to our kids and run our schools and our universities accordingly. That you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That's why we're against DEI and the affirmative action agenda. We're against group quota systems because we stand for merit. We stand for the rule of law. And I say this as the kid of legal immigrants to this country. That means your first act of entering this country cannot break the law, because that's what it means to stand for the rule of law in the United States of America. It means the people we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who actually run the government, not the unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. who pull the strings today. And that means we're not just going to reform the Department of Education. It means we got to get in there and actually shut it down to restore that money back to the states and to the people where it belongs. See, these aren't black ideas or white ideas or red ideas or blue ideas, not in my book. These are American ideals that we fought a revolution in 1776 to secure. And I believe, and I know you believe, those ideals still exist. We're going to elect Donald Trump in November to make sure that we have a commander-in-chief who revives those ideals. That's why we're here at this convention in Milwaukee this week. But it's not going to be just one man coming from on high from the White House to do it. If we are going to be saved, it is going to be because we save ourselves. Every one of us has to step up and do our part. I'll close on a note remembering our founding fathers and the sacrifice that they made in 1776. There were 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence. We celebrate them. We don't often ask what actually happened to them at the end of it. Of those 56 men, 12 of them had their homes ransacked and burned to the ground by the British. 5 of them were captured and tortured by the British until their deaths. 9 of them died in the Revolutionary War. 3 more of them had their own kids die in the Revolutionary War. They knew the sacrifice they were making. They weren't doing it for them. They were doing it for us. So 250 years later, we could still live in a free country. And I think we live in one of those moments today. I think it is a 1776 moment in the United States of America. 2024 is our generation's 1776. And it's up to every one of us to look ourselves in the mirror. And as I know this group does, and that's why it was so important for me to be here today. I know how Moms for Liberty has fought against the antibody response the system has had against your work, but we require you to continue doing it because our country requires it to survive another 250 years yet to come. So look yourselves in the mirror when you go home after this trip and ask yourself, what are your God-given gifts, and how are you going to use those gifts to do what is right in the short time that we're given? It was 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence. I think it will be moms across this country who sign our new Declaration of Independence in the year 2024. And if you all do it, I promise you, Donald Trump's going to do his part. I'm going to do my part. Every one of the people on this stage who you've heard today are going to do their part. But if you all do your part, then we don't have to be this nation in decline that we've become. We don't have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire as we're taught to believe. What I see is a country that is actually still a little young, going through our own version of our adolescence, figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. Still that country where I said it's not morning in America and I meant it, but we still can be that shining city on a hill. That country where we will look our kids in the eye and mean it when we tell them, you get ahead in the United States of America with your own hard work, your own commitment, your own dedication, and that you know what? You are free to speak your mind at every step of the way. That is the American dream. That is what we are running to, and with your help, that is what we will revive to save this great nation. Thank you all. God bless you and your families and your children, and may God bless our United States of America. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you.
So I want to thank everyone for coming today. We really appreciate your support. We want to say thank you to our sponsors, Young America's Foundation, Conservative Partnership Institute, Public Square, and the Heritage Foundation. I'll close with this. We are joyful warriors. Please remember this in this fight. It would be really easy to be angry sometimes, but we need to keep a smile on our faces, and we need to show the way forward for our children. We're going to close today with a really special treat. There's a young man here who's going to play some music for you. He's going to play God Bless America. His name is Aiden Muse, and he plays the banjo. He is an award-winning banjo player and performer from Twin Lakes, Wisconsin. He has earned first and second place titles at the East Troy, Wisconsin Bluegrass Festival Banjo Competition and was awarded a Blue Ribbon and Kenosha County Fair Merit Award for Musical Performance in 2022 and 2023. Aiden's story was also featured in 2023 on CBS. Thank you, CBS. Sometimes you guys do great work. More of that. Please give a warm welcome to Aiden, who is going to conclude our town hall with his rendition of God Bless America.
If tomorrow all things were gone, I worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my family by my side. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died to give that right to me. And I'll proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died to give that right to me. And I'll proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died to give that right to me. And I'll proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. forget the man who died to give that right to me. And I proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the U.S. Thank you, everybody.